All morning long, we've been showing you Liberation Day celebrations from the Netherlands. And while our Canadian vets are being honored in Europe, here at home, the Dutch community also preparing to host its own event to thank the liberators. Of course, this is the day marking 65 years since being freed from Nazi occupation in the Netherlands. Joining us in studio this morning is Martin van Densen. He is the president of the Dutch Canadian Association for the Greater Toronto Area. Also hosts a program called the Dutch Touch. Martin, thanks for being here this morning.
Well, thanks for inviting me.
I know you would love to be out there in the Netherlands, but important ceremonies to organize here in Canada today. First of all, I want to talk about your remembrances. You were 6 years old during the time of Nazi occupation. What are some of your remembrances there?
Well, I can remember especially the last year when I was getting a little bit older. There was no food in the house, and we had to sometimes walk for miles to go to a farm where there was a little bit of food. And I remember going to bed. I remember so vividly. I was young. My mom didn't have any food. We had to go to bed, and I was crying. And I said, "You have food, but you don't want to give it to us." And those are the things that I can remember. I can remember eating the tulip bulbs. Everybody says they tasted horrible. I can't remember if they tasted bad or not. But that's the hunger that I can remember. And my father, of course, had to go in hiding because at one point, every able-bodied person, man, was being picked up. And we noticed that in the village square where I came from. And we ran home and told my dad, and he went into hiding with my neighbor. And then we saw a school teacher running across the field. We called him over, and the three of them hid for about 3 weeks. And then they came down, and then later on they were picked up, and they had to work in our own local village. And an old German soldier used to come and pick them up every morning, and he sneaked in a loaf of bread once in a while. So there were a lot of good ones too.
It's amazing to me. It's 6 decades old, and you still remember that feeling of being a little boy and being hungry. Tell me what you remember about being freed by the Canadian soldiers.
Well, we were told by my dad that the Canadian soldiers were coming. We were going to be liberated. And so if you see a strange soldier, my dad had said, "You asked for a cigarette," because there were no cigarettes. We saw two strange, my brother and I, two strange dressed soldiers, and we went up for a smoky, and they were German officers, which we didn't know. We got a swift kick, and we ran all the way home. But then the Canadians finally came, and they paraded through our village, and everybody cheered them. And these Canadian soldiers, they would throw a cigarette on the ground. We picked them up and ran all the way home, and that's what we can remember. I can remember the planes flying over and saw in the distance the parachute, the food droppings. I can remember all those, you know, so... And that we got the bread, the Swedish bread, and it was, you know, there was something new and little biscuits, and then slowly things, of course, became better. And also can remember picking the collaborators being picked up. It's another sad part in the Dutch history.
One of the events that you're organizing today is called Thank You Liberators, and tell us where you got that title from.
Well, last year, October, I got the idea. We did this 5 years ago as well. Then said, what can we do? You know, we've had these liberators 65 years. Many of them cannot go to Europe. They're too old to travel. And we said, let's start, have a party and call it the thing. We got together with a committee. I called the Dutch community together and says, what can we do? And from that, we formed a small committee, and we said, okay, let's call it Thank You Liberators. And World War II conference, but the Thank You Liberators is the main part, and it stuck with us. And then we spread the word. We've invited 175 veterans that are coming with a guest at the Denison Armories. The Denison Armories have opened up the doors to us. They're the host, and we're organizing it. And all these, and of course, the whole Dutch community is coming out. We 1,000 people there altogether. They're
very, very strong and loyal ties. What I love about the title, Thank You Liberators, taken from the banners that were hung in the buildings in the Netherlands. And it's a personal message. It's a close relationship. And I thank you for coming in and sharing your stories today. An important day to remember and to honor today.
Well, I really appreciate for asking me. Thank you very much.
Thanks, Mr. van Densen. Martin van Densen is the president of the Dutch Canadian Association of Greater Toronto.